Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this webinar. We're really excited to have you on and to be able to present today. We see a lot of people have joined. To get things started, if you'd like, go ahead and let us know where you're joining from in the chat. We always love to see where everyone's from. While you're doing that, we just have a few quick housekeeping items to cover. So first off, this webinar is being recorded, and we're going to share that recording with everyone who's registered tomorrow. So expect an email tomorrow morning sometime with a link to that recording. And then the second thing is we want this to be an interactive webinar. If you have questions, please use the Q&A feature, which is you can find it. There's a little panel, should be a little panel at the bottom of your screen where you can open that up and put your questions in. And then we'll be monitoring those questions throughout the webinar. If we don't answer them during the presentation itself, we have some time dedicated at the end for Q&A. And then additionally, if you have further questions, we're happy to, hop on a call afterwards or, an email thread, whatever works best for you. So if you have questions, feel free to send those in, please. And those are all the announcements. So we're excited to get started here. I'm really excited to introduce our presenters. Really grateful to both of them for taking the time to do this for us. We have Mandi Bleau, or MSB, who's a global practice lead of our Microsoft practice here at Angle Point, and Myles Adley, who's a senior consultant on our Microsoft team. So I'm going to go ahead and give it to them, let them introduce themselves a little bit more. But MSB, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Braden. Thank you everybody for joining. I know I did a huge push last week. I think, Braden, we maybe had like 38 people sign up or some low number. And I said I wanted to get to 100 by the end of the week. And I got 93 and now we're at 168. So really excited to have y'all here. I've been at Angle Point for 3 years. A lot of you do know me. I see a ton of names that I recognize. So I'm really happy to be here. I've been doing this for about 21 years, Microsoft licensing in general, sales and tool, and now over here at Angle Point for the global practice lead. My sidekick is Myles today, and I'll hand it over to him.
Great. Thanks, MSB. So my name is Myles Adley. Been with Angle Point just over 6 months now. Prior to my time here, I've been doing software license compliance for both the audit and consulting realm for about 8 years. So been seeing a lot of changes over the years, especially as we get more and more involved with 365, Azure, and the cloud. So exciting times and a lot of new information to digest for sure for everyone. But yeah, excited to be speaking with you all today.
Thanks, Myles. So we're going to go ahead and go to our next slide. Sorry, I'm playing that need to find my mouse slide. So our agenda today is we're going to take a couple of polling questions. A lot of the times these polling questions actually get a lot of the conversation started. As Braden mentioned, there is a Q&A as well. So if you do have questions, if you want to know a little bit more information, do not hesitate to just pop them in there. Like you said, if we can't get to them, we will get to them. You can always reach out after as well and have some discussions. I know some of our clients are on here, so it seems like we're going to be having some future discussions if we haven't already had them with you. Then we're going to go through the Microsoft 360 overview, pretty high level, just kind of on the breakdown. And then Myles is going to do a pretty deep dive into user profiling, why it's important. Obviously, this is why we're all here, right? And then we are going to save some time for some Q&A. So right now we have our first polling question up, and it really comes down to how often do you check your 365 portal? And this answer obviously can vary. There's no wrong answer. Monthly, about once per quarter, only at true up, or just at renewal. If you go ahead and put in your vote. Oh, it's great. All right, awesome. So a lot of this comes up as monthly, which is really where we want you to be. You can check your your portal less, depending on the size of the company that you have, as well as the procedures, the policies and processes that you have in place. There's about 50% of you are monthly, 26% of you are about once a quarter. 16 only at true up, and then 8 just at the renewal. So if you're not checking your 365 portal, I'm sure somebody else is monitoring that for you. And we're going to kind of walk through why that's important as well. And then our second polling question is, when is the last time that you did an internal profile review? At the renewal, at the true up, at the signing, or within the past 90 days? So I'll give that a minute to see what comes through here. All right. So the breakdown here is at the renewal is at 17%, at the true up is at 26%, at signing is 10%, and within the last 90 days is 48%. So good mix there. I like the past 90 days as well. A lot of people actually do it at the renewal. They try and get that process in place when you're looking at what you're going to do for your renewal and the end of the year, as well as the true up and the signing, the first time that you signed as well. So we're going to try and get you to understand why it's so important to consider looking at those internal profiles. So 365, how do you break it down? So 365 was introduced little by little, right? We had our perpetual licenses, where you would sit there and say, okay, these are my licenses. I'm not moving from standard to pro. I don't need it. And you would really do that breakdown. Then you got pushed to the 365 subscriptions. Those updates continue to roll out since that 365 beta released back in January 2017. And if you don't know, just this year, there are 601 pieces in development. There are 158 that are rolling out this year, and there have already been 968 changes to 365 launched already. What I mean by that is and if you're looking at my LinkedIn post, you'll start seeing some of those changes. Like for instance, SharePoint has new lists that are going through. Copilot has some new releases for you to understand. What that does change the 365 license that you could be using. So if you're not using these specific products or you are using these specific products, it's going to vary what you change. Because we've had frequent changes in the names of the products and the rules, how it all works together, what your company needs, it has caused a lot of confusion. So you all know this, and I'm sure if you were on camera, you'd be shaking your heads going, yep. So Microsoft is ABC, always be changing. And they will sit there and just change the names. It adds more complexity. It adds more confusion. So we want to make it so that it is a little more simplified for you and how to understand it. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Myles to kind of go through what do you consider user profiling.
Great. Thanks, MSB. All right. So yeah, what is user profiling? So when it comes to M365, in this case, that's really identifying and grouping employees, users based off of realistically feature needs, right? Or products that are actually used in the environment. Typically that's done through roles, functions, departments, locations, et cetera. It really just depends on how your organization manages the environment. Taking a look, why does that matter? Why do we care? What do you need to consider when it comes to this? As MSB has mentioned, Microsoft does a great job adding new products and features and makes them available to you. I'm sure you've all heard it's, Copilot almost on a daily basis at this point. But in the grand scheme of things, it's great to have all of those options. Most organizations either aren't ready or don't want to take advantage of every single feature and are not able to benefit from all of them at this time. So when it comes down to that, the real focus really should be is right-sizing your applications so that you are matching your feature needs and product needs for your user population or profiles or different types of users with the associated subscription level that best fits it, right? This is going to help from an overall financial perspective, so you're not excessively spending on stuff you're not using. And this also helps make sure that from a use case perspective, the users have what they need to do their day jobs. It seems like a lot of people, based at least to those who responded on this call, are doing a pretty good job of managing their internal profiles on a regular basis, which is awesome. We know that's not always the case, But when doing that, management really comes down to, I guess, two ways to look at it. Is, hey, are we managing it? Do we know who's in each profile? But then also, are we reassessing, hey, what are the needs and the products that are relevant for each of the profiles? Sometimes that does change. And knowing what that is pretty critical when it comes to making decisions around what subscription level best is suitable for each of the profiles. So, and I'm sure many of you have talked with Microsoft. I'm sure they're probably encouraging you to get the latest and greatest Microsoft 365 E5. Again, a slew of different products and features, which is great, but at the same time, likely not something that you need for every single user in your environment, right? And so understanding the different types of users is important, and really having those conversations internally with the various stakeholders within your organization is definitely a big part of getting the ball rolling here when understanding this. Because obviously with Microsoft, there's the knowledge worker base, and then also some frontline workers, which is also a totally different 365 subscription plan, which can be an advantage, especially from a pricing perspective based on the users. And I mentioned stakeholders earlier. It's always good to make sure that before you make any decision, you touch base with your security team and make sure that they are signing off on certain features and products. I know that's something that we've dealt with quite a bit in the past. All right, so I know I went through a bit of a rundown on the different user profiles, why it matters, but then again, you probably want to know, hey, what are the features and products that you're talking about, right? There's a lot of information that Microsoft does make available, which is great. Sometimes though, it can be a little bit complex or tedious and a bit more involved to track down what features, what products are in each of the subscription levels. And also from a cost perspective, you want to make sure that you take your time and are doing that appropriately. So the first thing I would strongly recommend is when talking with the internal stakeholders and performing your due diligence, taking a look at the products and features, specifically Microsoft, obviously in this case, that are used for all users, right? Is there a baseline feature that every user needs, whether it's Teams, Exchange, Entra ID, BitLocker, et cetera? Finding that base set of features that all users in the environment need would be a beneficial aspect to understand what the minimum subscription level would be for all users, right? And then from there, when you look at the different user profiles, you can start stacking on what each of those user types need when it comes to features or products, right? Some need bookings, some need live events, etc.
And Myles, I'm going to stop you there. So I'm going to
Yeah.
have everybody, if you just quick question out there, and you can just click the raise your hand at the bottom of the thing. Have you used this feature profile, and do you find it complex to say, like, oh, wait a minute, I need this one from E1, but then I need this from F3, or I need this from E3 and F5? Do you have that challenge? Can you just raise your hands if you do? Just curious.
Yeah. Yeah, I think everyone at least probably has seen this document or a variation of this. I know it's pretty lengthy in this particular case. All right, perfect. We did at least one person raise their hand. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
maybe I didn't see it on that side. Maybe Braden only is the one who gets to see that piece of it. Thanks.
Yeah. Perfect. So this is going to include a list of the features and products that come with each of the subscription levels. One of the ways that can probably best help, once you understand what the profiles are, what features and products each of those profiles need to, run their business and what they're planning to, potentially use in the next year or so. The best opportunity is then to take a look at what subscription level aligns with those profiles and feature needs. You could leverage this. Again, it could be a bit more tedious, manual going through, but if you can automate the process, that will make your life a whole lot more simplistic. I know that one of the things that we built out is the 365 selector, which takes a lot of that information and makes it more of a dynamic interface for you. And so from here, you're able to take a look and you can go user profile by user profile, right? You've already listed out the feature needs that you have. You can go down this list, select which ones are of need for this particular user profile. And you'll see now that we're actually perfect. We're going through the example. And so in this case, we're selecting different features that, user profile A needs in order to run their business or do their day jobs. And then as that is populated, we have a table at the top that gets populated as well from there. And you can see the two rows here that have all 5 features in that subscription level, are both the E3 and the E5, which is great, but you can see that that's a bit more costly for E5 than E3. So the E3 is actually the one that would be suggested because it meets all the feature needs that this user profile would want, and it's also the most cost effective. And so this typically helps from a decision-making perspective, because now you can make a bit more informed decisions at a bit of a quicker clip than trying to manually navigate for each of the subscription levels.
Excellent. Thanks, Myles, for going through that. Really appreciate it. I know we've been doing a lot of user profiling since January, February. It has been such a hot topic. So not only did we start doing some additional deliverables, we have some additional reporting as well. But we're going to pause here and we're going to just kind of reach out to everybody here to see if you do have any questions that are coming, or that you do have any questions that are coming through on the Q&A. You can post them there. I think one of the biggest questions that I get is, how long does it take? What would be the time frame that you would do this in? That's generally 30 to 90 days before, whether it's your true up or your renewal. That gives us enough time, or it gives you enough time internally to kind of look at, who do I need to include? Myles really specified the security because we had gone through user profiling, and security is like, whoa, hold up. We need this, but we only need it for these profile people. So that was a huge cost savings for one of our clients. And so 30 to 90 days generally is a good rule of thumb. So one of the questions that we have is, what are your key indicators that a user can step down from M365 E5 to E3? So Myles, I don't know if you want to take that one, but it's really looking at the specific subscriptions or specific applications that you have here. But Myles, I don't know if you know one of that trigger point. I think BitLocker was one of them.
Yeah, I know a couple offhand. Obviously, we can always go through the full list, but I know Power BI Pro is one that comes with E5 and not E3. Enter ID Plan 2, some of the Defender products as well. All of those are E5, and if they're not being used, right, there's an opportunity to step down to E3. We can also look into some of the other products, or the full list of the other products where that would be relevant. I know that I know this is, in this particular case, we can't actually click on the tabs in the selector here, but in the feature comparison, you can see at the bottom left to the right of that form tab is actually the breakdown that you can actually search and filter for those, so that we can actually get the full list. So that's something we can definitely go into in more detail, but as needed. But yeah, there's typically going to be at least a handful of products that you could go through and check on.
Excellent. And then one of the other questions that we got submitted early actually was, what's the cost savings? How much do you save? Where can I save? And that is always dependent upon how much you're spending. Everybody says, well, no, it can't be, but it is. Anywhere between 10 and 20%. Generally, if you're going through these user profiles, you should be able to see a 10 to 20% reduction in the pricing. So we have 2 more questions. What kind of operational overhead shall be considered when trying to make changes, user profiles in larger organizations? Great question. A lot of that comes from, how willing are you people to make those changes? Is there any specific training that needs to go into it? And is it a huge process overhaul change, especially for large organizations? What we like to do when we do work with a lot of large organizations, one of them it has about 250,000 seats. We're taking it in tidbits and sections. It's not to say only the SAM team's working on this. You have to include these other teams. They have to make sure that they are aware of the changes, but we're taking them in bite size. So instead of taking the whole entire company at once, we're actually taking bite-size sections to get them to where they want to be. The good news with this corporation is that the renewal is not until 2025. So we've had a lot of time and effort a lot of time and runway to do that. So hopefully that answers your question. The next question is, currently our E5 subscription includes MS Teams, and I see on a few slides no Teams, and after EU lawsuit, MS started. offering M365 subscription without MS Teams. We were told by our reseller that we are grandfathered in and can add more licenses in future into the same SKU, which include MS Teams. Is that valid, or do we have to purchase MS Teams license separately? Ooh, that's a great question. Number one, get it documented. If your reseller is saying this, make sure that you are also getting that documented direct from Microsoft. Get it in writing. Don't have a verbal conversation about it. We have seen quite a few companies who have been grandfathered into what they have done in the past for a certain period of time. That's it, though. So we have a client that just got out of a 5-year agreement. They're not going back into a 5-year, they're going into a 3-year. They're grandfathered in for a specific SKU for an uptick on a price lock. They had an amendment for it, but it's only going to get them to this next 3 years, and then they got to figure it out. So hopefully that answers your question, but make sure that you do get that in writing from Microsoft and also put a timeline on it as well. The next question, what kind of products that are tenant-based should we be looking for that could influence these profile decisions? Do you mean within the specific 365 tenants, like if you have multiple tenants? Or Myles, I don't know if you need.
Yeah, I think I think
understand.
I may have a little bit of background on this one. So I know that there are some 365 subscriptions that are, we'll say, tenant wide. So when you deploy them, they're available tenant wide, but technically only certain subscription levels have the rights to it. And so there is that inherent risk there. But I know that is something that I know Microsoft has noted that they're aware of the situation, but there's no current, at least, workaround from them at this time. I know they're trying to get a little bit more insight as to how they can change that going forward. Right now, it is one of those kind of inherent risks because and to your point, it does definitely affect the overall profile mix.
Yeah.
But definitely something that if there is anything Microsoft does provide to you in writing, noting that, hey, we're aware of it, or again, I know from a compliance perspective, they may try to still circle back and take a look at that and see if you are using beyond what you have. I would just try to say, pay as close attention as possible on that and get whatever you
Great.
can in writing from them.
Great. Thanks, Myles. Mike actually has a question or a statement kind of in the chat. Your Excel assumes that you know what the end users need. Yes, that's 100% correct. Within a large organization, how do you go about assessing users' license requirements based on daily rules and how they currently work? 100%, yes. We actually look at the 365 portal. So we take a look at the 365 portal, what is actually being accessed, how much time is spent into it. So for example, we have just like our 365 ELP that we run against the 365 portal. We do it in Power BI. We also can do it in Excel. And what it does is it says, hey, you have an assigned user who has been assigned this product, but they're not using it. They're not using these specific features. So we're able to say, here are your 2,500 users that have logged in, assigned this, but have never ever used it. So they're in 365 and they're not using those products. That's where we're saying we need that internal breakdown. You need that internal user profiling before you go to Microsoft and say, hey, I need X amount of E3s or X amount of E5s. And like Myles said, they're going to be pushing the E5s. So if you don't have the ability to do that, then you could work with somebody like Anglepoint to actually get you that type of information in the breakdown. That's where we need the 36 or the 30 to 90 days, depending on the size of the organization, because now we're going to go start working with those teams. And then the people who are clicking on it, and are they really utilizing it, or are they just clicking on it? So hopefully, Mike, that answered your question as well. Lots of great questions and conversations going on here, and we can always continue them after as well if you would like. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Most excellent. This has been a great, fun way for us to start our Wednesday. We love sharing this information with you. And if you do need anything, here is our contact information. So you can go ahead and reach out to us. We do appreciate all of your time today. And thanks for spending half an hour with us to talk about 365.